Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm Andrei Cimpian. I'm a faculty member in psychology. I am part of the developmental group in the cognition and perception area, and I'm the director of the Cognitive Development Lab. If you're interested in any of the research that we do, I'll tell you just a little bit about it. Here's the address for our website. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the developmental group in our department that is composed of myself and 4 other wonderful faculty members, Karen Adolph, Molly Dillon, Kate Hartley, and Marjorie Rhodes. We all do research on very different topics pertaining to development. So this is a very exciting developmental area if you want to study motor development, if you want to study conceptual development, if you want to study development from a computational perspective, if you want to study geometry and space, whatever aspect of development you want to study, you'll find someone in our area that you can study that with. And our area in the department more generally is very collaborative. So students are encouraged to work with multiple faculty members and acquire multiple types of expertise that will make them more well-rounded developmental scientists. Our labs, so not everyone, but most of the developmental faculty are located on the 3rd floor of the Meyer building, which is a newly renovated floor. We used to share a building with physics, and then physics moved out, and we had the pleasure of working with some architects that helped us develop the space for the developmental area to our specifications. I'm showing you some pictures here. These are professionally taken pictures. So if you come join us, you'll basically work in Photoshop ready area here. So this is our reception area where parents who are coming to the lab to do research get acclimated and sign consent forms and so on. This is a caller room where research assistants recruit parents to come into the lab. This is some of the office spaces that we have. Here is our brightly colored interview rooms or testing rooms. Each of the faculty has 2 of the rooms. These blue ones here are mine. The yellow ones are Marjorie Rhodes's, and so on and so forth. So we have lots of great facilities for recording children's behavior. There, you don't see this in the picture, but we have wall-mounted cameras that can record children's behavior from multiple perspectives. There's also a nice lounge area where you can meet with your research assistants or get lunch or hang out with your friends. But in addition to bringing parents into the department, parents and children into the department, we also take our research all over New York City. So among the many of us developmental faculty, we do our research in a variety of public venues around New York City. So we have good relationships with the Department of Education, with public schools. We haven't been back since the pandemic started, but we have high hopes for this fall to be able to go back and continue our research in schools. We have been successfully doing research during the pandemic in New York City public parks, which, because they're open air, it's a lower risk, so they're more amenable to actually doing research with children. We have relationships with the Wildlife Conservation Society, which essentially runs all the zoos and aquariums in New York City. So another partnership that is more amenable to research during a pandemic. We can go there and interact with children in an outside setting that minimizes the risks of contagion. Plus, you get to be in a zoo, which is always fun. We have relationships with museums as well. So Brooklyn Children's Museum and American Museum of Natural History. American Museum of Natural History is still, their children's room is, the Discovery Room as it's called, is closed, but the Brooklyn Children's Museum has allowed us to come in and interact with children on their terrace. So this is all to say that there are lots and lots of resources that the department and the faculty that specialize in development will put at your disposal for doing your best research if you come here and join us. In terms of the research that I do specifically in my lab, we're interested in many things, and we do research with both children and adults. But one central thread that runs through a lot of the research that I do has to do with stereotypes. So all of us embody multiple social identities. and many of those social identities have certain societal ideas attached to them. And what I'm interested in is first, how do children find out about these? How do they learn about these societal ideas that pertain to the the social identities that they embody? And then how do these societal ideas, the stereotypes that pertain to the groups that they're part of, affect their motivation in school, their achievement in school, the kinds of things that they aspire to be when they grow up? And just as an example, one of the studies that we've done that we published recently looks at stereotypes about intellectual ability. You know, everyone wants to be seen as smart and to be smart. And yet in our society, we see some groups as being more intellectually capable than other groups. So for example, if you look at what American parents Google about their sons and their daughters, you see that they're much more likely to ask Google whether their sons are gifted and brilliant and geniuses than whether their daughters are. And conversely, they're much more likely to ask Google whether their daughters are overweight or possess some sort of physical attribute, right? So this speaks to the fact that, you know, American parents well into the 21st century still associate traits of intellectual ability and giftedness with boys more than girls, and value girls to the extent that they embody certain ideals of physical attractiveness. So one of the things that we were interested in is, especially with the intellectual ability side of this, when do children start picking up on these ideas that people around them see boys as particularly likely to be intellectually gifted? Now, asking kids about gender is a tricky proposition because, especially at elementary school ages, which is where we focused, there's a lot of in-group bias. So girls think that girls are better than boys at everything, and boys think that boys are better than girls at everything at the age of cooties, right? So you can't really up and ask, so do you think boys are smarter or girls are smarter, or are they the same? You have to be sneaky about it. So one way we did this is by simply telling kids stories about an unspecified individual, unspecified gender person who's really smart. So we told them stories about individuals that are really smart, and we didn't tell them anything about their gender. And we simply asked them to choose from a set of pictures of unfamiliar individuals who the person in the story was. And we kept track of how often they chose men or women as the individuals in these pictures, as an indication of whether they associate being really smart with men more than women or women more than men. So here's what we found. This is the only bit of data that I'll show you that kind of illustrates some of the things that we're thinking about. Here I've plotted for you the proportion of trials on which children chose members of their own gender as being really smart. That's what I've indicated here as own gender brilliance score. And these are children that were 5, 6, and 7 years of age. At the age of 5, everyone, both boys and girls, pretty much choose members of their own gender as being really smart. So about 75% of the time, boys and girls, when asked who is the really smart person in the story, choose a person of their own gender. However, at the age of 6 and continuing at the age of 7, you see a dramatic shift where boys continue choosing members of their own gender as being really smart, whereas girls show a dramatic drop in this respect, and they're significantly less likely to think that members of their own gender are really smart. So this potentially suggests that this is the developmental origin of some of the attitudes that we see among adults as well, where attributes of giftedness and genius are associated with men more than women. We've done many more studies on this in various locations within the US and around the world, and also connecting some of these attitudes with children's own motivation and interest in various activities that are described as being, for example, for kids who are really smart, showing that from the moment that these stereotypes are acquired, they start undermining girls' interest and motivation, as well as others' perceptions about whether they'd be likely to succeed in activities that are said to require intellectual ability. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm happy to take questions if there's time left, and I'll monitor the chat a little bit for questions that come up. But thank you all for your attention, and I wish you all the best luck with your grad school applications, and hope you'll consider us seriously for your PhD program.